Welcome back to the Sunnyside of Freedom. We are here today with our friend Clyde, also known as Arlen. Sunny met Arlen, Clyde, on the TikTok platform, and I'd love to introduce you to him. He is a medically discharged Army veteran. Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Did I get that all right?
You got it all right?
All right. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Part of the mission here for Sunny is getting our veterans' stories and familiarizing ourselves with their stories
Hmm.
and getting to know them more, getting to know the Sunny Side of Freedom mission. And you, my friend, and I call you my friend because I've met you.
Absolutely.
Um, I'd like to kick it off and just give our viewers a little bit of a foundation on how we met.
So I was introduced to your TikTok platform, I want to say January timeframe. Um, and I love how it all works together because initially I was introduced to Vibing with Chief, and then through that
Hmm.
to the Sunny Side of Freedom. And it's a lot of the same people that interact and in on both platforms. And I was a little nervous at first because with Chief, he's a veteran, so it was easy to connect.
Yeah.
And then coming over to your platform, I was a little more hesitant, just because you hear horror stories and you get and you've had maybe some of your own experiences with dealing with a civilian, and the the veteran industry, I will call it an industry, has become to some people a a lucrative moneymaker.
Yeah.
And I very quickly realized this was not the case with Sunnyside of Freedom. And the people in the group, in the chats, in the lives, everybody was just genuine and truly, whether civilian or not, truly care about veterans and veteran issues.
Yeah. One of the things I call it our safe space because that's what it feels like to me
It
too.
absolutely is.
We get to know each other as people that we forget who's veteran and who's civilian.
Yeah,
And that's right? You just like
absolutely.
become friends.
Yep.
And that's the whole point. It's bridging that gap that I keep talking about. And your concerns are genuine. I mean, I had them going into veteran groups. I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm not a veteran. I don't belong here. And part of breaking stigmas is
Absolutely.
stepping outside your comfort zone. So what
Breaking
did I
down that
do?
barrier.
That's
Yep.
exactly it.
Breaking
I
down that barrier. It's huge.
decided to start hosting veterans lives. I mean, talk about breaking down the barrier.
Yeah.
Um,
You just jumped through. You broke through that wall like the Kool-Aid man.
it's something like that, yeah. And it's been like 2.5 years now that I host the veterans live every Friday night. When you started showing up, obviously, we're all just usernames on TikTok. We don't
Right.
really know each other. We start to identify with who's a veteran, who's a civilian. Our
Right.
veterans get in the boxes on Fridays. And then before you know it, relationships start and it becomes like the Sunnyside family. Like, hi, how are you? Everybody's
It's a
greeting
huge family.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it is a huge family.
and that's kind of, and I'm going to segue us into our most recent encounter
Hmm.
because I got to meet you in person. And part of that platform is building up for something greater, which is the opportunity to unite veterans across the nation. Now we're
Hmm.
uniting we are uniting them on a platform, but then taking them from that platform and saying we get to meet in person. And as of recent, we were in Georgia at the
Hmm.
Sunnyside of Freedom meetup number 3. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We met at a the location was amazing. Ginger Shack Farms up in Ellijay, Georgia, and like you said, Sonny, we all met on the TikTok platform, and then carried that, and we got to know each other there. So when we got to the meetup, there was no surprises. We had been I'd been talking to these other guys and you for weeks, months, and Scooter called me uh, a week or two ahead of time. We talked on the phone for over an hour. easily over an hour. And it was like we had known each. I've never met Scooter. It was like we had known each other our whole lives,
Yep.
and that that connection was real. And then when we got to the meetup, it wasn't. There was no handshakes. It was hugs for all the way around.
Yep.
And it was you know, um, and so it was an instant bond. It was an instant camaraderie connection, and those are relationships and friendships and a family that I will carry personally for the rest of my life. And that for me was huge. I mean, that was just one of the things that Scooter and I talked about on the phone was what is the biggest thing. I think it was what is one of the biggest things that you miss from being in. And for me, it was the camaraderie.
Yeah.
Feeling not necessarily alone. I mean, I get out. I'm not a recluse or anything like that. But having that, excuse me, having that connection with other veterans is, and I live right next to a base.
Yeah.
I live right next to the base that I was stationed at most of my time in service, and so, but it's still, I don't have the access that I used to, so it's not the same, and but having that opportunity to be able to attend the meetup and meet these other guys that I've been talking to online for, weeks and months, and share stories and joke around like we would have when like we did when we were in, and the jokes are the same. the
Yes, they
the
are.
uh, the sense of humor does not go away, um, and but it was really awesome. It was refreshing. It was um, three three almost going into our fourth week
Yeah.
post meetup. I still i still have a little bit of a high from it, and it was really awesome, and continuing to connect back online now. And we I I text with these guys. We talk to each other on the phone, and it's just that connection is huge.
Most certainly. I think most of our veterans who have participated, that is one so much of what you've already shared is just that. Like you may know of some veteran organizations, but you're not really connected. So, in a sense, you're alone, but you're not alone. You're just not involved in that. And that's such a missing
Right.
piece to that puzzle. And just watching you, and I've said this before because I see it and I feel it. I'm like, look at them. It's like you guys are in heaven. The way you guys just interact with each other, you're laughing, you're yourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I mean,
the
from the
best.
minute, I rode up there with two of the other guys, and from the minute they came to my door to pick me up, it was instant just from that
Yeah.
minute. And so then it was 3.5 hours. My stomach was hurting, but halfway up there just from laughing. And so it was really, it was a, I know we've talked about it on the lives at different times. It was just that. I think you described it, watching those shoulders drop. And I
Yeah.
felt it. Just watching those shoulders drop, and you can just relax. You're safe. Everybody around that campfire is watching lanes. And it's one of those things where you are safe, and you can talk about whatever. There's
Hmm.
no judgment. We all go through things. We're all going through things. And it's a safe environment for us to talk about it and to maybe get feedback from other guys, not in a, well, you should do this or you should do that kind of thing, but I understand you, brother. I've been there, or I'm going through it myself, all kinds of things like that. So it was really like I said, it was an experience of a lifetime for me. And um those are relationships that will never go away.
And I love hearing that. I do really love hearing that. And for our viewers, if you want to know more about the Sunnyside of Freedom mission, what it is that Sunny is doing, with uniting veterans across the nation. It is both on the social media platform, on the TikTok platform, hosting veteran lives, giving our veterans an opportunity to get to know each other, come together, build relationships online, and then taking it offline at these veteran meetups. Thus far, we've successfully hosted three in three different states. This last one, most recent, 3 weeks ago, was in the state of Georgia. Really, it's like solidifying it all together, and these relationships don't end because the meetup does, and that's the
Hmm.
most beautiful part of it all. It doesn't end like if you went to a wedding, like, yeah, I'll see you later. No, we connect every day. We're in
Yep.
connection and communication, which I need to go there with the conversation briefly,
Yeah.
because too often we find our veterans feeling isolated or alone, like no one sees them, understands
Hmm.
them, or is willing to hear them. And if nothing else, at least now they have a list of friends that they can call, whether they've been communicating from the platform or had the opportunity to participate in a meetup and have these relationships. And Clyde, I just want to say from this standpoint, is it what you expected?
It was it was better than what I expected. I mean, and this kind of brings me back to something you just a second ago mentioned. You know, there's all these other groups out there that are, might be the VFW, or there might be something local in your hometown. Um, Being able to have that initial connection online where there's a little bit of an anonymity, you can still a little bit self protect,
Yeah,
and through that getting to know people, and then having that face to face meetup. Just said it was like I'd known these guys forever. Um,
yeah,
and so I think that social media and can be a mean, nasty, awful, ugly place, but in this in this respect, it has been huge. I have seen in the connections that we've made, like you talked about. We have a list. Now our whole everybody that was at that meetup, we have a group chat, and we talk every day, and we
yeah,
share stories back and forth and jokes and whatever, and we did an exercise. Yeah, we did an exercise the second to the last day of the meetup, and um, as part of that, um, we exchanged phone numbers. And it was about a week ago. I got a phone call, and I didn't have the number saved to my phone. I didn't know who it was, but I answered it, and it was another veteran from that meetup, and he was in a bad spot. I'd given him my number. I'd forgotten about that I had, but because we were talking every day on the group chat,
right.
and I had the opportunity to spend a good length of time on the phone with him until pretty late at night. And by the time we got off the phone, he assured me that he was good. He was better. And I don't know what would have happened had it not been for that meetup. I don't know what would have happened to him. I'm glad that he reached out. Thankful that he reached out, and I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to take that phone call and talk to him. And I followed up with him the next day, and we talked. We talked more the next morning, and you know, I love that man, and everyone that was at that meetup. I mean, I'm a grown man, and I will tell you, I love them, and that was huge. I mean, just that by itself. If if for no other, if it never went beyond that, you know, um, in my opinion, the Sunnyside of Freedom platform saved a life that night,
Thank you for
and
saying that.
because of that connection that was able to be made, and that because that connection was facilitated.
And thank you for picking up that phone that night. these lifelines, as I call them, we each have one now. We have multiple, actually.
Hmm.
Granted, we're gonna lean a little bit more towards certain friendships than
Sure.
others. But that's not to say that if we gathered around the campfire tomorrow, we wouldn't be back at it, laughing,
Oh,
dancing,
absolutely.
and being our goofy selves because we
Yep.
did have a lot of fun, boy. And you're right, lots of amazing memories and relationships were made. Um, and I'm grateful that you took a leap of faith and, you came along because I know that's nerve wracking. And we've talked about this before on other lives, how
Hmm.
difficult that must be. It's easy to get on a live, and it's another thing to say, oh my, I just committed. I'm going there for like Thursday to Sunday. Is it going to be
Right.
okay? That's huge. That's a huge step.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. But it was, like I said, it does take that, and we've talked about it on the lives before. It does take a little bit of a, you got to have some personal courage to take that step.
Yeah.
That's one of the Army values when I was in. I don't know what they've changed it to now. One of the Army values was personal courage.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the other branches, on their core values, but, that's something as a veteran that, I took an oath and that never expired, but you carry those values with you. And so I would take that
Yeah.
step and get in, join the lives. Let us get to know us and let us get to know you. And then, take that opportunity when it comes. And I promise you will not be disappointed.
It's definitely an experience of a lifetime for sure, and friendships to last. Let's talk a little bit about your service, if you
Hmm.
don't mind,
No, absolutely.
from service to where you are now.
So I enlisted in the Army in um, March of 2000. Um, did my basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and then I went to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, for counter intel school. And from there, I was stationed at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Um, I got to Fort Gordon in December of 2000. Had a had a trip to the Middle East in the spring, like April, May, June, and then we got back from that. Obviously, then in the fall, we're all doing our training exercises and all kinds of stuff, and then of course 9/11 happens, and I still get choked up every time I go out there. I haul concrete now, and we go with the gate we go through for with the trucks. We go right past um, my brigade's motor pool, and that's where I was standing that morning when it happened. Um, So multiple deployments. Obviously, the first one was in Afghanistan, and then several to Iraq after that. But I got out. I got injured in Afghanistan. Um, um, Pretty bad back injury, and toughed it out for another couple years, and then started having some more serious issues. And I had the MRI, and the orthopedic surgeon asked me if she said, I hadn't even got a chance to sit down in her office yet. She said, have you thought about what you want to do when you get out of the Army? Uh, okay, I didn't realize it was that bad. Um, so she gave me the option of either them cutting me open and putting titanium rods on either side of my spine or getting out. And I wasn't real keen on an Army doctor cutting my back open. And so I went ahead and got out. And I was kind of lost for I started another job, a DA civilian job that fall. I got out in June, end of June of '05, and I started a DA civilian job, basically doing the same thing, just as a civilian. Um, that carried me through mentally and emotionally because I felt like I was still contributing, I was still making a difference. Um, and then in '09, I got out of that. And for me, that's when that's really hit me. Like I didn't know what to do after that. Um, I just didn't. I ended up eventually getting back into law enforcement, which is what I had gone to school for prior to the military. And it was it was tough. Um, it was hard to deal with people, and and I mean, I've never had a problem making friends or anything like that, but it was different because I was still used to that military mindset. And although law enforcement and military are very close, I didn't see that really tight bond. And if you did, the higher ups very quickly tried to break that up. They didn't want, that close of a bond. And so it was that for me made it really tough. And you felt like you were always watching your back, looking
Yeah.
over your shoulder, and eventually I ended up just saying, screw it. I am tired of stressing myself out, stressing my body out for someone else's well-being. Because when I was in, same way as when I was in the army, it was the same way I was in law enforcement. I ate, breathed, and slept the job. There was nothing else. I could not be the best at what I was doing if I didn't, if I wasn't that way. And so I just went and did something that essentially, well, I thought it was going to be mind numbing. Turned out driving trucks in the mountains in the wintertime was not mind numbing. But it was a job that I didn't have to be. When I got out of the truck, I was out of the truck. I didn't have to think
Yeah.
about it. I didn't have to think about what are these guys doing for the next 3 days while I'm off, or anything like that. When I got back in the truck, everything was exactly where I left it. You know, I wasn't trying to play catch up. And so I've been doing that since 2013, and I've had various, driven for different companies and had various trucking jobs.
Mhm.
But um, it gives you a lot of time for, in some aspects, for me, it was a little bit therapeutic. That I know, Chief loves the windshield time. I do too. It is therapy. Um, he calls it highway therapy. I call it windshield therapy. Being
Yeah.
able to see the sunrise come up over the prairie or over the mountains, um, or the sunsets, and I've got my camera roll is full of sunrise and sunset pictures, um, from all over the country, all over North America. So I'm grateful for that, that aspect. But it also affords a lot of time to sit alone in your thoughts,
I was gonna ask about
and that, um, after a while, started to become a little bit unhealthy. I mean, it wasn't catastrophic or anything like that, but I just got pretty lonely and pretty. Oh, I want to necessarily. I guess I did get a little bit depressed. I don't know if I had depression, but I was depressed,
that. Mhm.
and so I would bounce to the next job. I'd take some time off and bounce to the next job, and so yeah, so that's where I'm at now. I'm driving local now, but it's it's you still don't have, even I go to an office, or I go to a plant, concrete plant, and I have a bunch of other guys around me, but they don't. There's two that are veterans,
Mhm.
and they're not. It was there's only one of them that I really have a connection with that's at my plant, um, and he feels the same way I do, and we have both have a tendency to just go sit in our trucks,
Yeah.
you know.
So
And go ahead.
I was gonna ask you, I was gonna backtrack a little bit, from listening to your military experience and then your law enforcement experience, and I heard the word stress. What
Hmm.
did that level of stress and overcommitment to the job, how did it affect you personally or your personal life?
Uh, failed marriages, failed friendships, failed dating relationships, and it was partly the job, and then to cope with the job, it was alcohol. I'd take the cap off a bottle and throw it in a garbage can, and you know, and it was, um, and it wasn't all. I shouldn't. not over exaggerate because it was, it wasn't always that way, but there were times that it was, you know, and I come home from a deployment and I'd spend 2 or 3 months just soaked. Um, and that's not healthy for anything.
Right.
Um, I'd come home from, in law enforcement, when I was doing in law enforcement, it would be the same way. If there was, I might have drank more when I was working in law enforcement, because it was every single day. It wasn't, 6 months at a time or whatever. Um, but I think the last deployment I was on, even though it was as a civilian, I was in Iraq for a year. And when I got back from that, that was probably the longest time. That was the one time that I looked at myself and I said, you got to stop because you're well on your way to not being able to stop on your own.
Yeah.
And um, so that was my coping mechanism. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know,
So
there's stories and so many others do the same.
yeah, it seems to be a running theme with our military, our veterans,
Hmm.
leaning into alcohol as a means to cope, whether it be with pain, whether it be with
Hmm.
life events, things that are happening in their life, adjusting to the civilian world, just trying to make sense of things.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm glad you did stop and recognize that within yourself. And if I can ask, was there anything specific that you started doing to replace the drinking? Was it exercising? Did you pick up a hobby, for instance?
um I really didn't. I just, and I can't say that I have abolished
Mhm.
alcohol. I just have, you know, I still have a drink now and then, but the just I started spending more time with my kids, and that was a good distraction for a healthy distraction for me. Um, and getting outside.
Good.
Around that time I moved back to Minnesota. I hadn't at that point I hadn't been home and came in 2000. Outside of a couple very quick maybe weekend trips, I hadn't really been home for any length of time in over 5 years.
Mhm.
And so it was just getting out, just getting outside, enjoying that. Up there it's out in the country and it's you know back on the farm we got the horses, and you can, I tell you what, there's no better view in the world than between the ears of a good horse. And
Yeah.
I could go get on that I could go get on a horse and ride and ride and ride for a whole day. And it was, and you can talk to a horse and they will
Yep.
listen, and they're the best listeners ever.
They really
but
are. So are
but that
dogs.
was, yeah, dogs are too. But for me that was probably a saving grace, and getting outside and fishing. My brothers had a boat, and my dad had a boat, so we spent a lot of time on the lake fishing. And so that was the combination of those things. um, just kind of reconnecting with my roots,
Mhm.
um, getting that getting that connection back, getting back in church, which for me was a that's one of my roots. And um and I will say that's probably one of the things that has played a huge role in my, um I don't want to say ability because it's not me. That relationship with God has been a huge contributing factor to, I feel like, you know um, why I've been able to overcome some of these hurdles and overcome some of these
Mhm.
obstacles. And like I say, the drinking, I probably would have said after that last Iraq tour in 08, 09, I was as close as I've ever been. And there's a history on one side of my family of becoming a full-blown alcoholic.
Mhm.
It had got to that point, but like I said, it was able to, um, through getting back in church and getting some connection there. was
Yep.
able to steer away from that.
Well, I'm proud of you because not only did you identify, which is so difficult, but you also accepted what was going on in your life, and took charge. You knew you
Mhm.
needed to make a change in your life to improve your quality of life and your future for that matter, and those around you. But then you identified with the things that helped you, and those were your roots, whether it be
Mhm.
religion, family, your
Mhm.
children, to try to bring back some of that and healthy activities. You mentioned
Yep.
fishing. That's a very, and so are horses. They're both very
Yeah.
therapeutic. Just being outside in general. So it makes me happy to hear that for you. Clyde, I think one of the hardest things, even for Sunny, hosting a Veterans Live, I've been doing it for 2.5 years. I've heard a lot of stories, both on the screen, behind the screen.
Mhm.
And the hardest is when you do have someone who's not willing to take the next step or
Mhm.
to look for that sobriety or just make that change because they've given up altogether because they
Mhm.
have nothing left to hang on to. And, you can offer some advice. That would be fantastic if you have it for maybe a veteran who needs to hear it if they come across this.
Well, like you said, it takes, you have to be willing to take that step, and depending on where you're at, and actually, really, no matter where you're at,
Yeah,
that first step is scary. Um, but we use a hashtag in the in the Sunnyside of Freedom group, never alone,
right.
and that's that's everything. You're never alone. There's always there's always someone here willing to listen, willing to talk you through, willing to listen you through whatever you might be going through, no matter what it is, and with no judgment. That's the biggest thing. I think so many people are afraid. I was afraid for the longest time of, you know, oh, they're going to judge me, or they're going to look poorly on me for this or that or the next thing, and so I didn't ask. I didn't talk to anybody, and um, but that you got to have it does take some personal accountability, and it does take some
Yeah.
personal courage, and you have to take that first step. um, Otherwise you're just going to be stuck on that hamster wheel going around and around and around and never getting anywhere.
Yeah. And I'll always reinforce it's okay to not be okay and it's okay to reach out.
Absolutely.
Reaching out is difficult for so many of us, civilian and
Yep.
military. It's just difficult. It's just difficult to
Mhm.
reach out out of fear of, what people are going to say, what they're going to think. And the truth of the matter is, reaching out just symbolizes courage. And, you know, reaching out is necessary for survival. You need to know
Absolutely.
when it's time to reach out, and, there will be someone there, but, you said the personal accountability. I too give that tough love, like,
Hmm.
I can be there, I can listen, I can support, but I won't continue to enable, because at that
Right.
point, it's a decision that one makes, and I can't make it for anyone. It's personal. It's a personal
Hmm.
decision, but possible. And if you're hearing it out there, just know that it is possible. And there are people out here in the world that care, genuinely care about your well being.
Hmm.
And we want you here. That's another message. We want you here. You're needed here.
Absolutely.
Um, because we also focus greatly on 22 a day. Bringing awareness to 22 a day is our veteran suicide crisis, and 22 a
Hmm.
day number symbolic
Right.
to that, but much greater than that. Um, so with that being said, you mentioned that you're in this new position, not necessarily new, but this role that you're in of driving and finding that quiet time. I can kind of relate because I spend my day in and out of the car. Granted,
Hmm.
I probably have a little bit more interaction than you because I'm in and out of accounts, but if I have long stretches of time, that is my time to think. And yes, we can overthink, especially when
Hmm.
things aren't falling into place the way we want them to.
Yep.
The noise, knock it off, knock it off. So I'm gonna ask you, what do you do? What do you do when the noise gets too loud?
Music. um I go, man, I mean, music therapy is huge, and
Oh, yeah.
um, and talking on the phone. I will talk. I will call. I spend more time on the phone now with people that I've met through Sunnyside of Freedom than anybody.
I love
And
that.
those friendships and those connections are 1,000% real. And whether it's talking or texting or whatever, but it's just it's become a pretty big part of my life, daily life, just having these phone conversations, and when I'm not on the phone, I'm just jamming,
Yeah.
um, and that's fun. I love music, and so when I got introduced to Chiefs Live, I was like,
You're in the right place at the right time.
I'm in the right
Let's
spot. So,
go.
and I'm
And we got
learning a lot
yeah.
more. I'm learning a lot of new music, so I love it.
You sure are, you sure are, and, and for those watching and don't know what we're talking about, go visit 420chief.net. That is his website, and you can also find him on the TikTok platform. He hosts a music live Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and I have to plug it in because you hear it from him, and he's one of our veterans who participates and finds therapy in music because music is therapy. Um, so with that being said, and we appreciate that time. Actually, tonight's Monday. We'll be there tonight.
Right?
It's a place where we can come together. And I think, when you talk about the friendships that we've made on my platform, we've taken it off the platform. We meet
Yeah.
together and in real life, and then we reconnect again back online, like in Chiefs Live, and then back on my live. It's like you're never truly losing touch. You're
Right.
always connected on some level. And I think the most interesting to me too is, we do have our group that we connect with. And I think it's kind of cool that every day
Hmm.
there's somebody in there saying, "Good morning."
Yep. Yep.
There's
Every
a
day.
joke to follow every day. It's like, and that to me means a lot. And I'll tell you why. Because prior to this group, prior to them meeting in person, they probably didn't have anyone to text, right?
Yeah.
Or not as many people, and not
Right.
regularly or
Right.
daily.
Yep.
So there's so much value in what it is that we're trying to build here. But and I say this to you too, Clyde, because you're a part of it. The sunny side of freedom isn't just me, Sunny. It's
Right.
all of us. We make the difference. And you guys always hear me talk about there, be the difference you want to see in others. And
Yep.
that's every single one of us playing an active role in just that. Um, and Chief is in the comments saying, ha ha ha. Music heals, most certainly does.
Love you,
Music
Chief.
does heal. We love you, Chief. I had to go there. So, with that being said, yeah, you've said so many things today. Being that nervousness of, do I join? Do I not join? Because there are so many organizations out there. There are a lot of people. I will say this: there are a lot of people doing amazing things for our veteran
Mhm.
community, and then there's a lot of people that aren't.
Right.
I call them mouthpieces.
Yeah.
Put some action behind those words, and then come talk to me. You
Hmm.
know. Um, we're doing more than just that. We're really seeing the difference. We're feeling it, we're seeing it, we're making a difference. Like you said, had it not been for the Sunny Side of Freedom Veterans Night, the platform where we can all come together and meet, you wouldn't have connected with this specific individual, and you
Right.
wouldn't have been at the receiving end of that phone call, potentially saving a life. And,
Hmm.
Sunny, this isn't something Sunny talks about regularly, but I know that at the end of the day, I know that there have been lives saved
Hmm.
and the time that I've been doing what I'm doing. And there's no price tag on that. There
There's
just
not.
isn't. There is none. But what else would you like to share with our viewers today as a veteran, somebody who's come back medically discharged, struggling with pain, trying to find your way, like all of us out here, right? This
Right.
crazy world.
Um, I want to touch on a TikTok post you made last week. I think it was last week
Okay.
that I duetted, and I want to break a stigma of the civilian versus um, veteran, or the civilian veteran connection,
Yeah.
um, and the stigma being that civilians can't help veterans because they can't understand, and that's hogwash. Um, when when I was in service, there were civilians all over. You know, they might have been in support roles, but they
Mhm.
were all over. You can't. It's not just the soldiers. This isn't the World War II military anymore. This is our whole military operation functions with civilians. So while civilians might not know exactly what it looks like to be in a combat or different things, you know what? They care, and um, and they want to help. And for me, I was one of those. I was one of those that said, I'm maybe, but you take that step of faith, you take that step of courage, and because I was seeing other veterans in these lives, and I was hearing them talk about, or reading in the chat, hear them talk about their experiences at the at the previous meetups. And you know I had something go on, was last week, and I think I missed a live.
Mhm.
Three. Within 20 minutes, I had three civilians from this family reach out on a DM. Are you okay? And I would, you know, I mean, I was okay, but it
Mhm.
was wow. I just, I got busy and I had something going on, but that was huge because they care, and they care enough to say, "Hey, are you all right?" And so, yes, to break that stigma, and I think I've said it in one of the lives before. So veterans need civilian support. You know, we do. We just need it.
Yeah.
It's essential because you know when you interviewed JP a couple weeks ago, that's one thing he said. You're a civilian now. You're a
Yeah.
dirty civilian, and we are. But that's yes, we have that veteran tag, but we are now civilians, as opposed to active duty, and so if there are civilians that are willing and have a desire, have a burden, a heart to help, let them help.
Yeah.
You
And at the
know,
end of the
do
day, Clyde, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
do your own personal homework, do your own vetting, because in this day and age, that's a scary thing.
Yep.
But they are here to help. They want to help. You know,
Yeah, and that's actually what I was gonna say. Whether you're a veteran or a civilian, there's good and there's bad in every
absolutely on both sides.
barrel
On both
on both
sides.
sides. So, like he said, do your homework. Energy is huge for Sunny. I can feel
Hmm.
people's energy, intentions, and even then I'm wrong. But overall, do your due diligence. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Don't immediately judge someone by a label because you're just honestly hurting yourself. You're not allowing yourself to potentially look how far you've come just from it, coming in and taking a leap of
Yeah.
faith and saying, all right, let me check this out. What's
Yeah.
going on here? What do you mean a
Yep.
civilian's running a veteran's life? What is going on? And she has to meet up. But with that being said, I'm proud of the steps and everything you've done to try and overcome some of the challenges in your life. And,
Hmm.
you know, it's been a pleasure to get to know you in person. And I know I'll meet you again at
Likewise.
some point,
Absolutely.
another meetup, as we start getting closer and talking about it.
Mhm.
Because you're all bonded by service, but we're bonded differently now because we've
Right.
had a different type of interaction here, you
Hmm.
know? Um,
Absolutely.
and still very service related. But it was an amazing meetup with all of you. Many wonderful memories made for sure, and wonderful conversations for sure. And again, leading back to the relationships that we get to take away from these events. As my closing thought, what I will say to our viewers is, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, whether it's here on the YouTube channel, whether it's on my TikTok platform, visit my website, sunnysideoffreedom.net. Drop me a message. If you want to know more information, get familiarized with the mission. Listen to some of these veterans tell you firsthand what their own experience was and how it's maybe changed their lives from where they were to where they are. because people need people. And you're right, that video that I made, I meant it. There's
Hmm.
still a huge stigma with the ideology that they're civilians. There's no way in hell. No, we're human and we're all Americans, and
That's
we're
the key.
here.
We're all Americans.
Yeah, we're all Americans and we're supposed to help each other out.
Hmm.
And if we continue to keep each other in these boxes, we're truly not growing past them. That's it.
Hmm.
That's as far as we're going to grow. And it's also very important to know the energy that you're taking in, whether it's helping you grow. So
Hmm.
I'm glad you've been a part of the Sunnyside of Freedom family. I look forward to having you grow with us. We've made some amazing friendships along the way. And if you're out there, hello, we need sponsors. I'm tired of doing raffles. I'll continue to do what I have to do, though, with the help of our friends, of course, including our veteran community. And I wanted to quickly say this, as much as I love our veteran community and how they believe and see in the mission to want to see it come to fruition a fourth time, a fifth time. I hate when they donate. I'm just going to say it. I hate when they donate towards the mission because it's for them. And yes, there have been instances where I've had certain veterans say, Sonny, does my heart good. I'm older now. I can't go for such and such reasons, but I want my brothers and my sisters to be able to participate in this. But
Absolutely.
to those out there who are in a position to donate and sponsor, I also have to add, please visit www.breakstigmas.com. That is our nonprofit. You will find myself, the Sunnyside of Freedom Mission. You will find 420 Chief and his mission and what we've managed to do together. We've come together as of late 2024 to embark on this new journey, having a nonprofit, which will allow us to host even more events, whether they be a Sunnyside of Freedom event or a 420 Chief event. And I'm excited for the big announcement when it happens, where we end up having a Break Stigmas event. That's an event where I want to see our civilian friends there, not just our
Hmm.
veteran community, but truly bring some of those amazing individuals that you've gotten to know as well in our lives and say, here we all are. We're all
Hmm.
breaking bread and we're around that campfire. So again, breakstigmas.com, get familiarized with the nonprofit and get to know my mission, the Sunny Side of Freedom. Clyde, I appreciate you. It's been amazing really get to know you and spend time with you, of course, on our last meetup. Any closing words for you?
Um, yes, thank you. Um,
You're welcome.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for having the courage when you started this, not knowing what you were getting into completely,
Yeah.
not knowing the language, and you've learned a
Nope,
whole new language.
I sure have.
um, some of it can't be said publicly live, but you've learned a whole new language, and I just thank you for having taking that initiative and having the heart to step up and and run with it. Um, and for any other veterans that are out there, that if you're hesitant or on the fence, just take that step. You know, come in the lives and just see and meet us and get to know us. And one thing I've found out going from the lives, going from the social media platform to the meetup is everybody's authentic and everybody's real, and it's the same people. There's nothing fake about it. um, no fake personalities or anything like that. It is
Yeah,
very real, um, uh, supportive, caring, loving family, and I will call it just that. It is a family.
thank you.
I didn't serve with any of those guys, but they are my brothers, and you are my sister now, whether you like it or not.
I know, I still
um,
struggle with that one, like, brother, I'm like, because it's so heavily used within the military community, the veteran
yes,
community, that I always feel weird, but then I know that I offend some because 'cause they're like, "You're our sister now, knock it off," you know?
yeah, yep, yep.
So,
The amount that you have done, um, to support the veteran community is just it's amazing. So thank you for that, and thank you to anybody that has sponsored, um,
yes.
or don't sponsored a meetup or donated, um, and a huge thank you to Ginger Shack Farms
Absolutely. This is
up
our
in
last
LJ.
meetup.
They are.
Yep.
I'm telling you what. If you want a weekend to get away somewhere quiet and peaceful, that is the place to go. I don't know their website, but otherwise I'd say it, but I don't know it. But just
Just
Google
look
it.
up Ginger Shack Farms in
Yep.
Georgia, LEJ. Amazing getaway weekend.
Yeah.
They
It
went
is.
above
It
and
is
beyond.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. But that's. I mean, that's what I would say in closing, Sonny.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And most certainly for those that continue to support the Sunny Side of Freedom and support the mission, heartfelt thank you for all of you. And, Clyde, what I will say to you, you leaned into your faith and I leaned into mine when I took on this mission.
Hmm.
It was called to my heart to do, and I've stuck it out. It hasn't always been easy. And yes, I've had moments I myself have questioned what I'm doing
Yeah.
because it hasn't been easy. But here we are, and we're making a difference. And I'm glad to
Hmm.
be doing it with you alongside of all of us. So, with that,
Absolutely.
Sunny's out for today. We will be back with other veteran interviews. Guys, get to know our veterans, hear their stories. Sunny does periodically, once every 2 weeks or so, post up veteran stories because it's important. Every story matters. Every story matters. I want those that are struggling today to know that lean into hope and never lose hope. You're not alone. There are others out here fighting alongside you. You just have to reach out and stay sunny, stay spicy, always make it count, lead in love, and lead the way for others. Shine that light bright enough that others can see it. Much love and much respect. And thank you, brother, for being here today. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
sister.